Does Tyreek Hill's camp want the Miami Dolphins to deal him to the Los Angeles Chargers? We're going to talk about it because the latest report indicates that may be the case. Plus, we're going to have opinions on Aaron Rodgers being out in New York. We all told you when the media was hyping it, when the betting books were hyping it, we told you don't buy into it. Wish we would have seen that for the Dolphins, but here we are. We'll also discuss who may be the easiest cut for the Dolphins this offseason and so much more. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's go Fin Too Deep.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown. He's in.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphins fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one. Hope everyone is having a good week so far, as hard day is tomorrow and Cupid may be knocking on your door and shooting some arrows. Doesn't seem like they'll be shooting any arrows towards the relationship between Tua and Tyreek anytime soon, or Tyreek and the Dolphins anytime soon with the way things are trending. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Before we do get into it, how's it going, Neal? How are you doing? I'm sorry for our tardiness. I will blame myself. I was running behind because I had an appointment with my daughter, and then we caught up backstage, and here we are. So what's going on, Neal? How you doing? How's your week been? Hey, everyone is caught up. We're all in the off season. And what did you think of the Super Bowl?
Yeah, man. Good things happen to those who wait, right? So, patience is a virtue. But no, Super Bowl, man, hey, kudos to the Eagles, man, because they came out, kicked ass, and took names. And, I don't know if I've ever seen Pat Mahomes so disheveled in a game in my life. And, I'm not in the business of wanting to sit there and watch the Chiefs three-peat. So I think the parity is good for the NFL. And, what it made me really honestly start to think is, man, this is a great defensive line draft. That Eagles defensive line was the difference in that football game. For all those idiotic teams that passed on Jalen Carter because of some bullshit reports and stuff like that, I bet you wish you could have had him now. He should have probably been the number one overall pick in that draft. He might right now be on par with Chris Jones as the best defensive tackle in the league. And then, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, the rest of those guys, Nolan Smith making big plays. So kudos to the Eagles. Good season. Man. It was good to see them kind of knock the Chiefs' door down. And, one thing I'm excited about on the Dolphins front is the Bobby Slowick news. It's been a long time since I think the Dolphins have had this complete of a coaching staff surrounding their head coach, man. I mean, keeping Anthony Weaver, keeping Darrell Bevell, both those guys, potentially look like they could be leaving, keeping that coaching staff intact, then adding Bobby Slowick to me. I'm hoping Bobby Slowick can be that voice in Mike McDaniel's ear to kind of help him continue to grow as a head coach. And I know Slowick doesn't have, the head coaching experience, but I do think he is a well-respected play caller, and I think that could take some of that burden off of Mike McDaniel's shoulders.
So I think the Chiefs and the Bucks in the Super Bowl was the last time I ever saw him running for his life like that.
Right.
And then we saw how big of a focus it became on building the trenches in Kansas City after that. But hell, I mean, I know everyone knows how much you love Trey Smith. Everyone knows how much Trey Smith is loved around the NFL. He might be a $30 million guard, and he was getting dominated on the interior.
Him and Creed Humphrey, they were getting rocked.
Can I tell you, though, and I know you remember this, was I not telling Dolphin fans? I didn't have to tell you, but was I not telling Dolphin fans and they were balking at me when I said I would trade Wilkins in our first-round pick for Jalen to get up and get Jalen Carter? Remember I was saying that?
Hell
and people
yeah,
like, you're nuts, Reason. That's way too much. Oh, yeah. Same people who told me, oh, Reason, I wouldn't take Brock Bowers in the top 20. You keep saying, hey, if he's in striking distance, trade up and go get him. He's generational. But now they're the same ones saying, let's take Tyler Warren at 13 in the deepest tight end class that we've seen in decades in the draft. These people have lost their freaking mind, and I wouldn't let them near any war room, let alone the Dolphins war room. Another thing I want to say, though, is, you know, it's interesting you bring up the defensive line, because I don't know if you saw today, but they announced the amount of they announced all the combine invites. I don't know if
I saw that.
Happen to see that, all the combine invites. But think about this. You want to know how loaded this D-line class is? Check this one out for you. 25 defensive tackles were invited to last year's combine. This year, 41.
Right, yeah. I saw that.
Unbelievable.
Dude, this is the draft to get 2 or 3 guys. It's the draft to get 2 or 3 guys. It marries perfectly with what our teams need are. Anthony Weaver, our defensive coordinator from Baltimore ties. The Ravens take 2 to 3 defensive linemen in every draft. That's how they find guys like Travis Jones. They find guys like Justin Matabuki. This is setting up very nicely. And it's not always just the guys in round 1. You know, we all know Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, Mason Graham. We all would be ecstatic if that any of those guys.
We leave our Kenneth Grant combo in a second, but continue going on.
But there's guys like Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, Jordan Phillips from Maryland, Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. You know, Darius Alexander from Toledo showed up.
Deion Walker, Tyreek Williams, CJ West. Yep.
Yeah, there's so many guys that like they have to leave with 2. They have to leave this with 2. They have Zach Sealer and Calais and Benito Jones are both unrestricted free agents right now, right? Like they have Brandon Peely.
And we don't think Calais is coming back, right?
Yeah, I think he's gonna. I think Baltimore or Detroit is probably the likely destination for him, or retirement, man. So like, I don't think he comes back. I think Benito Jones could come back on a really cheap 1-year deal, right? Like, you know, I could see him getting a stay-home deal with him, but. You know, we need 5 guys to round that out. So
listen, I think this needs to be a trench-heavy draft. I've said 100%. This. I think you need to double dip on both sides of the trenches in free agency in the draft. I wouldn't, if their first 4 picks were all trench players on both sides of the ball, I would not be mad at all. But let's go into this for a second, because we talked about, you know, a lot of players, and I think a player me and you can really agree on. You know, a lot of people talk about, and hey, Malachi Starks has fallen a little bit on people's boards, but you know, there was a general consensus of everyone we would agree on at 13. I think a guy I know you've liked for a long time, and a guy, you know, I'll ride that passenger seat on the bus with you, because we were just talking about him backstage. You can drive the bus, I'll ride the passenger seat with you. I think at 13, if you draft Kenneth Grant, me and you were talking about we're talking about a guy who has a higher ceiling than Mason Graham. When you look at this guy is a freak. We were talking about before we went live. This guy has been clocked at his size going 18.75 miles per hour. Okay? This guy can do Turkish get-ups with a 150-pound dumbbell. And I think he's a complete player, and I think he's only going to get better. Like, I look at Mason Graham, he's closer to his ceiling than Kenneth Grant is. And that's a scary thought when you look at Kenneth Grant. And I think at 13, when we're talking about these trenches, we were talking before we went live too, the amount of people coming out of Ole Miss, from Trey Harris to Jackson Dart to Juice Wells, if you want to get a receiver later on the other side of the ball. You got Princely, a guy I really like, Chris Paul, but also a guy you really like, Walter Nolan, who I'm pretty high on too. I mean, these are picks at 13, and I think Kenneth Grant is the cream of the crop. Where, brother, Kenneth Grant to me is a blue chip player, and if you can get him at 13 in a draft where maybe there's only 8 to 10 blue chip players, if that, I think, draft those quarterbacks. Let them go, baby. Draft 4 in the top 10. I hope Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart blow up the combine. Let's go.
Right.
And you were talking about this before we went live. That's the perfect scenario where where something can drop in. This is your words. If one of these players can drop because quarterbacks are being taken,
right?
And Kenneth Grant's the perfect example of that, man.
And that's why for me 13's too rich for the offensive line players. And it's no disrespect to Kelvin Banks, who I think he's my first tackle on the board. Everyone else, I think that you get a defensive building block in this draft class that allows you to continue to build that defense around Chop Robinson last year and whoever you get this year. And I've whittled my guys, my hit list of 5 guys in order would be: number 5, Shamar Stewart; 4 would be Malachi Starks; 3 would be Jalen Walker; 2 would be Walter Nolan; and Kenneth Grant would be number 1 on my list. And, I was well known to love Jerzon Newton last year. And, I'll be honest, he underwhelmed probably as a rookie. I think he'll probably have a better season.
Also had a lot of shit on his plate for a rookie.
Right. But Grant is a different player because he has eye-popping, staggering size. 6'3", 350 range.
And the way he moves for that size,
it's alien. It's an alien-like. It's like a UFO dropped him off in the middle of the night and said, here's this guy who's different than everyone else. My comp for him is a much more athletic Justin Matabuki, which is a compliment because I think Matabuki's a top 3 defensive tackle in football behind Jalen Carter and Chris Jones. I think that his ceiling is higher than any defensive player in this draft. And I think it wouldn't shock me in the least bit in 5 years he's the better Michigan defensive tackle. And everyone's like, oh, holy shit. How can you say that about Mason Graham? I think Mason Graham's splendid. I actually have him ranked higher than Kenneth Grant. I think he's more of a
more
sure
complete
thing
right now.
Yeah. But my comp for Mason Graham is Christian Wilkins. You know what I mean? And that's not disrespectful, but I think that's the type of player you're looking at there, where I think Kenneth Grant, for what the Miami Dolphins are looking to do, you already have the most athletic pass rusher maybe in the league, and a guy like Chop Robinson. Go get a guy with elite athleticism who can stop the run, who can rush the passer, and whose motor, he never runs cold. What we were talking about before we went live was against Penn State, when Nick Singleton, who's going to be a second-round pick in next year's draft, beat the Penn State defense, and Kenneth Grant comes in your video out of nowhere, chasing him down from behind. Like, at his size, you can't. It's like a buffalo chasing down a gazelle in the middle of a field, man. It's crazy. It's crazy what he can do.
Yeah.
And what I hope, man, is because of Stephen Ross's affiliation with Michigan, that he's poked into that room. As much as I don't want him to meddle, but I want him to be like, yo, Chris Greer, give this guy an extra look. And I don't know what the consensus is. I love Walter Nolan. I think he's a little bit more juiced up Ed Oliver, which I'd be more than fine with. But I think Kenneth Grant could be a complete building block to a new Miami defense. And man, he fills the biggest need in this team to me, which is a guy you put right in the middle, who's tougher, badder, and stronger than everybody else he goes against. He's an attitude changer up front. And with all due respect to Benito Jones, I think he played well last year. He's not a true nose like that. That's not what he should do. And I don't think Kenneth Grant can be labeled as a true nose, because I think you can move him around. But I do think his play strength, man, and his athleticism and the NFL, centers aren't going to be prepared. He's going to have the best centers in football on their heels quick. He's a guy that if I had to pick today, the number 1 player that I want at 13, it'd be Kenneth Grant.
Oh, hold on. Is that realistically there? Because if it's going to be if I could get any player at 13 with a little bit of slide, Oh, baby, I wish Will Johnson would fall in our lap so hard.
Well, look,
but he
there's
won't.
like, so it just depends.
If Will Johnson is on the board at 13, run, baby. Run. Him and Ramsey, with Fuller.
Well, here's one little rumor that I heard. I heard the Raiders are. This is pretty well known. They're going to go after Sam Darnold as their quarterback, and I heard if they successfully get him, that the guy they could turn to in the draft at number 6 is Ashton Gentry. Which to me, look, I love Ashton Gentry, but if you can get him,
Pete loves his backs, baby.
Well, if you get him to go, I do think Cam and Shador are both going top 10, whether they deserve it or not. If Jackson Dart's rise continues and he goes in the top 10, you are going to get talent that gets pushed down, right? Like, and I think Will Johnson's definitely a top 10 player in this draft class, but he is coming off of an injury-plagued season. And the team that scares me, though, is the Jets because
– just so good, bro.
Well, they're going to lose DJ Reed. Their head coach, Aaron Glenn's a defensive back at heart. And there's a lot of questions right now on whether they pay Sauce Gardner. And I think Will Johnson to the Jets is a real possibility. But if he gets out of that gauntlet, like you look at Carolina at 8, I think Carolina's going to go Ted McMillan to get Bryce Young a real weapon there. I think at 9, the Saints are a team that's probably – the guy that I think they're going to take is Jalen Walker from Georgia. He plays off ball. They need a little edge support. He can do both. Chicago at 10 is an interesting spot, but I think they're going to try to shore up that offensive line. So I think Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks are there. You got 11 San Francisco. Like, I think San Francisco is going to look to get an edge like Shamar Stewart to pair with Nick Bosa.
Or if one of those guards, tackles that can play guards is there, they're probably losing Aaron Banks.
Trent Williams is old.
Yeah,
Trent Williams
Armand Membo makes a lot of sense there, actually.
He does.
Yeah. He could play guard, take over for Banks, and then kick out if you want him to after that.
And I think Dallas is going to get a skill position player. If Gentry's there, they'd probably take him. If not, and Ted McMillan's gone, I think that's an Emeka Egbuka landing spot. I think Dallas wants to get a better receiver to pair with CeeDee Lamb to give Dak more weapons. Like, I think.
Yeah, but you know who makes sense there is Luther Burden because of the size.
Yeah,
Luther Burden makes sense there, right? I'm so worried that we're going to take Emeka Egbuka at 13. Oh my God, I'm telling you. I know how they were sniffing around trying to move up for Roma Dunze. Emeka Egbuka is like what? See, what scares me is Mike McDaniel was a receiver, and minus the 4.2 speed, that's pretty much what he wants in a receiver. Like, we can make the argument Emeka Egbuka is the best blocker in the draft.
And he's the best route runner, probably.
Yeah. And what are they going to do? They're going to interview people at Ohio State, even people they have connects with in the league. And what do they all say? Jackson and Smith and Jigba, all these guys say he's the best one out of all of us.
Right.
I'm really worried that because especially with all this Tyreek noise we're going to get into, I am really worried because, listen, I think you can get a Savion Williams or a Besh or, one of those guys outside of day one where you don't need to make that commitment. But I got a nagging feeling because I'm looking at that wide receiver room. Once you get past Malik, we don't know what Tajay is. River Craycraft is what he is. You know what I mean?
And he's a free agent, right? Isn't he a free agent, River?
I think so.
Yeah, he is. So, look, wide receiver is sneaky a need for the Dolphins because, we're going to talk about Tyreek.
Yeah.
Malik Washington, as good as he is, and I think he has a lot of upside.
It's a slot.
We need, whether he's a 3 and we need a 4 and a 5, or if he's a 4, we need a 3 and a 5.
Yeah.
We need receivers. Like, there's just no doubt about it at this time. And we need receivers with different skill sets than the guys we have.
And to your point about how good of a route runner he is, I think people get stuck watching the film and they see him in the slot, but they're not realizing why he's in the slot based on the talent that's been around him. Egbuka has worked from the boundary. He's been very effective on the boundary. I think a lot of teams view him as a guy I can work on the boundary. I can work in the slot. He's not and Malik feels like a guy you're just going to pretty much regulate to the slot right now.
Right.
Relegate to the slot right now, right?
Egbuka's a smooth operator, man. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's better than Chris Olave to me. He's better than Jackson Smith and Jigba to me. He's a good player. I think 13's a little rich, and I think I think the Dolphins have to go trenches. Like, they have to go trenches.
I would agree.
It's it's not just a narrative anymore. It's the talk of the Miami Dolphins, is how soft they are. And if we learned anything from the Super Bowl, because everyone's like, look how good the Eagles' offensive line is. Well, Jordan Mailata was a 6th-round pick, right?
Yep.
Landon Dickerson,
wasn't he?
Seven,
Wasn't he
6 or 7. Yeah. Landon Dickerson was a 2nd. Cam Jurgens was a 3rd. Mekhi Becton was a 1st, but
and Dickerson was a 1st-round talent, but injury drove him down.
Right. Becton was a reclamation project from the Jets. Lane Johnson was the number 4 overall pick. And
we should have taken.
Right, we should have taken him. But other than that, and then you look at their defensive line, man, like they won the Super Bowl because they kept Jalen Hurts upright. They gave him running lanes. Saquon Barkley had lanes for days all season long. And that defensive line ate in the biggest game of the season. And Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, didn't matter who it was, they were on their heels all day long.
Which is crazy. Look at the names he just rifled off, and they didn't blitz once. It's like the 4th game in the next gen stats era where a team did not blitz. Like 4-man rushes, and they were doing nothing but winning one-on-ones. And it's when we played the Eagles in Jalen Hurts' rookie year, in Jalen Carter's rookie year, you could kind of see that developing because I remember breaking down the film. Do you remember the stuff Jalen Carter was getting away with against like Eichenberg? Like he was punching mother effers in the side of the head. Like you remember that band? I forget what it was called, but what was that band? It's that band where you whack them in the side of the ear. You whack.
Oh, whack-a-mole.
Oh no, there's a name for it. There's a term for it. It's named after a player. Anyways, where you like whack them in the side of the ear, and then you basically, wow, why is it slipping myself? You basically whack them in the side of the ear, and then you basically do a swim over, and you're through. Well, I forget what the name of it was. Anyways, I'll look it up when you're talking. But, like you could see, no, it wasn't the club. It was something because it wasn't a club. It wasn't a club. Like a club you can get away with. This is like an illegal shot. It's an illegal shot.
Well,
yeah, it's the Deacon slap. The Deacon slap.
Deacon slap. Oh, Deacon Jones.
Yeah.
So Trey Smith, like we all have talked about how good he is. Like you can't hold any punches. He got his ass kicked in the Super Bowl, man. Creed Humphrey couldn't handle the speed of the Eagles up front. Like that. That to me is like why when you have the 13th pick in the draft, if we were picking 20th, I'd say, you know what, get me an offensive lineman, go get me that number 3 receiver. I would listen to tight ends at that point. I would do different things. When you're up this high, you need to get a game-wrecking guy on the defensive front.
And you got this many holes.
Yeah, you have this many holes. And your defense, when you look at what you're going into next year, like Calais Campbell was a top 3 player on this defense. He's likely not coming back. Fair? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Javon Holland, everyone's turning on him. I don't care. He might not have had a good season. Javon Hollins is still a top 10, 12 safety in football who's young and in the prime of his career. He's gone. We're not signing him. In fact, I think the Dolphins are going to go on a run where they get the 3rd and 4th compensatory picks this year. They'll probably get a 3rd or a 4th for Javon next year. And then I think after the following year after that, it's going to continue with Jalen Phillips. I don't think they're going to keep him. I think that his injuries are going to make it hard for them to keep Jalen Phillips unless he can prove that he's 100% healthy. I think they're going to go on a run of building comp pick value. So, but you need to fix this defense to where you have the ability to take over some games and take some of the pressure off of the offense. And I think they've overachieved when you look at where they rank. But I never watched the Dolphins defense, maybe outside of the Rams game last year, and said, holy crap, this defense can take over the football game. Yeah. Like they outplayed what their investment was from a cap standpoint and probably what our expectations were. But I still think that from when you look at the league's top defenses, like their defensive lines have a chance just to take over games and dominate. And ours played well, but I don't think they did that.
Yeah, because, I mean, even the Chiefs have a much more dominant front 7 than we do. And look at how the Eagles stifled them, right? Like, look at the time Hurts had, man. Sure, there were plays where he extended, but, man, he had a lot of protection, a lot of time, and it made the difference. He had one guy running for his life. He had another guy running to make plays with nothing but green grass in front of him. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a tale of two different stories with how that all ended. But okay, let's get into this. We teased about talking about Tyreek. Actually, you know what? Before we get into Tyreek, we didn't even cover it. Let's cover this. All right. Trevor Lawrence. What are your thoughts on this whole Trevor Lawrence to Pittsburgh thing? Because there's been conflicting reports. Now, this was reported earlier this morning that there's been inquiries. Now, I think people are getting way too much hype behind it and losing their mind over it, Neal, in the sense of like, you know, like, okay, you're the GM of the Dolphins. I'm the GM of the Ravens. Bro, you could call me tomorrow about Derrick Henry. Okay, like just to check in and be like, hey, man, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Same thing with like teams would call us because we're in such a bad cap situation. They're going to check in on the availability of players. And you look at the situation right now where Fields probably isn't coming back and Wilson isn't coming back. And the word is if they have to pick between two of them, it's probably going to be Justin Fields. But what are your thoughts? Because I'm going to be honest with you. You want a hot take, bro? If I was the Jags, what are you offering me? Because if you're offering me 2 or 3 first-round picks and you're taking on my $50 million contract on Trevor Lawrence, I'd actually trade his ass. I'm not even lying to you.
There is no team in football that is truly, I think, a quarterback away from being a contender than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really think they have a top 5 coach in football. We love what they did with Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier going to their offensive line with Broderick Jones, and I think when they're all healthy, it's going to be a good unit. At tight end, they have Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. They do have George Pickens. Like, sure, they need another weapon on the outside. Their defense is great, like all around. They need to turn every stone over they can to find someone because Justin Fields, Russell Wilson aren't going to get the job done. There's not a free agent, Sam Darnold included, in my opinion, that is a quarterback that can lead them in a deep run against the likes of Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or Pat Mahomes. So they should turn every stone. And Trevor, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is awful. I think he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. But we can't lie. He's a coach killer. Like, let's call it what it is. Coaches are leaving Jacksonville left and right. Now GMs are getting fired. When that type of turnover usually happens and that turbulence exists, a smart franchise, even if they think they have a guy, has to listen to what's out there, right? Because if I was the Tennessee Titans GM, I'd say, hey, Pittsburgh, if this is true, give me a call. Because if you want Cam Ward, you give me 3 first-round picks and Minkah Fitzpatrick, a player, we can have a conversation, right? Like, I would, you know, so they need to turn every stone over. But now, like, where do they go from here? Because if they don't go and get a Trevor Lawrence, is it Derek Carr that they go down to, which to me is a huge drop-off from Trevor Lawrence, right? So it's like if the cat's out of the bag that the Steelers need a quarterback, they're confident, I think, at this point that when they're on the draft at 21, Dart, Sanders, and Ward are all going to be gone. And as I'm a Milroe fan, Milroe's not helping you next season at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
so what are you going to do? Because I don't care about Kyle McCord, Quinn Ewers. None of these guys, I think, are ready to be the franchise leader for a playoff caliber team like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Bro, I think the NFL is higher on Ewers than me and you are.
Oh, I'm sure they are. But like the Pittsburgh, they need to do something drastic. Trevor Lawrence would be drastic. And I will say this. If we've learned anything in sports in the last 3 years, right? And I use a basketball analogy. Luka Doncic is a freaking
I was going to say last 2 weeks, bro.
Right.
Never mind last 3 years, last 2 weeks.
Like, I am a bandwagon Luka. Luka is my favorite player in the league. I cannot believe that somebody woke up and said, I'm trading a 25-year-old Luka Doncic. And look,
and that was the only call you made was to the Lakers. That's nuts. Shocking.
And I'm a little nervous because I will say this. I think he'll be fine in LA, but he does look like his heart is broken the way he's playing right now. Like,
but did you see the message Dirk sent? Dirk showed up to watch his debut
in
LA instead of going to Dallas.
The best player in your franchise history put the middle finger right at you. Wow. And that's, to me, it's... Do
you think if Cuban had as much power as he used to, I don't think Cuban would let that happen.
No chance. Dude, if I'm starting a franchise from scratch today, and I'm being real, like, I think Giannis is good. I worry about long-term health. Wemby, Wemby's up there. But, dude, Luka's in my top 5. I think Luka is unbelievable, dude.
He is always nasty.
Dude, I woke up...
Imagine if he took his body seriously. Imagine if he took his body seriously, bro.
Well, see, here's what I think happens. I think this is going to kick his ass in gear. And I think it is. Dude, I
LeBron?
Yeah, we were in Indianapolis at the Royal Rumble. We were about to fly back. I woke up, dude, hungover as shit, and I saw that, and I could not believe it. I thought it was like a prank. Like, I couldn't believe it, dude. It rocked me. But then it proves to me that there's no loyalty in sports. And I knew that when I saw Michael Jordan play in a Wizards uniform and Peyton Manning's play in a Broncos uniform, right? But, like, every few years you still get astonished that people will move on. Like, I will say this. Jacksonville has had zero success with Trevor Lawrence. If Pittsburgh's calling and they're just hanging up the phone, they're going to stay in that top 5, and they're probably going to go through another coach in the next 2 years because – I'll be honest, the coach they hired seemed like a fucking idiot already. Yeah, so like,
but we all thought Sirianni was going to be like a stooge too, and look at what's happened.
Right. So it's like, I don't know, man, but I will say this: Trevor Lawrence in Pittsburgh would be pretty fun to watch. I wouldn't want it because I think the Steelers are a team that could be better than us with a better quarterback, right? So yeah, he probably would. So I do think, look, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I think. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. The free agent class sucks. The draft class sucks. Where else are you going to go find them?
Yeah. Hey. I think the draft class, I don't think it sucks. Like, I don't think it's as bad as the 2022 class, bro.
I know that was the worst class. Was the Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker class.
Bro.
That was the worst ever.
Like was that the Paxton Lynch year?
That's the year we took. That's the year we took Jawan James at 16.
So I don't think it's that bad, but I get it. Like I've told you, there's only 4 quarterbacks I would take in the first 4 rounds, and it's Ward, Dart, Shador, and Milroe.
I do like Ward.
I do too, but there's still things in this game that you're like, that ain't gonna work in the NFL. Like sometimes he looks like looks for the highlight clip instead of looking for the smart play, et cetera.
He ain't Jaden Daniels.
No, but that. You know what Cam has working for him and what's gonna make him a potential baller at the next level? He does have that fourth quarter ice in his veins, and that is what can turn guys into the big time winners at the next stage. So,
and that's why he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, right? Like I think people will flirt with trading that pick, but I think the Titans are going to pull the trigger on Cam.
Yeah, I agree.
It just makes too much sense. And you're not taking. I've heard people say Aaron Rodgers to Tennessee. Now you're not giving up Cam Ward to get Aaron Rodgers or the shell of Aaron Rodgers.
Before we get into this, I got a good one for you. Would you pay Brock Purdy $55 million? Or would you let him walk for 1 year of Aaron Rodgers if you're Shanahan?
I wouldn't let him walk for 1 year of Aaron Rodgers because I do think Aaron Rodgers. Or
would you go back and get Sam Darnold?
Like, I'll be honest. I think Aaron Rodgers sucked this year. I don't care what the stats say. He was awful.
He
was every EPA, he was bottom 5.
Us. Yeah, he was good against us. That's it.
Yeah, we're the footnote in his Jets tenure, unfortunately. But he was a complete disaster there. But I don't think it's San Francisco. Now, the one thing I will say is if they are able to move Deebo Samuel and they can get Aaron and Devontae there, maybe that changes it because I think Devontae is going to be on the West Coast. But I don't think I pay Brock Purdy $55 million, though, overall. I don't.
But what if they say, okay, we're not going to pay you, Brock. We can bring Rodgers and Devontae in here for cheap because we're losing Deebo, too.
Yeah. I think Aaron Rodgers would want that, but
he's a Cali boy, right? He's like Brady.
John Lynch. I don't think John Lynch would pull that trigger. I don't. I think they're gonna commit to Brock Purdy, but I do think the 49ers are that team that's been close for so long that they're gonna start really losing assets. Trent Williams is getting older. He's breaking down. Javon Hargrave is going to be a potential cap cut from what I hear in the next couple of weeks. That's a big loss. They're losing Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga that are big losses to that defense.
And Dre Greenlaw is going to be on spoiler alert, he's going to be on my free agents to watch this.
Charvarius Ward, their corner, is a free agent, and he wants to move closer to the East Coast because he had his untimely death of his child, and he can't get out of it, and I don't blame him one bit for that. But, Deebo Samuel now is on the trade block. Can Christian McCaffrey really stay healthy anymore? Like, they have more questions than answers in San Francisco now. So I would say that, their window is rapidly closing. They need to do something drastic. And, I don't know, because Deebo's contract is very team-friendly to a team that acquires him. The cap hits are not that bad because you got paid a lot of money up front. like Deebo Samuel is going to – I think he definitely gets moved prior to the draft. And I look at contenders and I look at teams that have done business. Keep an eye on like teams like the Ravens for Deebo. He's a great fit there. They'll do what he does. He does all that underneath work. He's physical. He blocks. They're going to like that type of stuff. I could see Baltimore ponying up a third-round pick to try to get Deebo.
Speaking of receivers, Tyreek Hill. All right.
Yeah.
He's kind of, people forget, right? And I covered it on this channel. Remember, what was it, a month and a half ago, right when the season ended? Remember he teased, he was liking a post about him.
Chargers. Yes.
About going to the Chargers and the odds. Chargers were the odds-on favorite. Well, Bill Simmons had this to say on his podcast. We'll play the clip here, and then we'll go from there.
Our left this draft. Looks like they had the worthy pick, but the offensive line is like really rough. There's other teams coming. The Chargers are going to be better. We saw Tyreek Hill on Friday. I was trying to get him to come to the Pats. Wasn't happening, but there was a team.
Are you going to tell him what he said afterwards?
What did he say after?
I said, come to the Cowboys. And then he did the eyes thing. Like, I'm looking at you. I said, you may have to be our running back too. He's like, that's all right. I'm ready. So here we go. That is good news for Dallas.
Well, and then somebody that was with him was like, watch out for the Chargers, and walked off. I was like, what do you mean?
So you've got this man talking about the Cowboys and saying he'd be all right with playing running back at the Cowboys when asked about it. And then you got someone else in his camp saying, yeah, watch out for the Chargers.
Yeah. Am I muted or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Dude, the Tyreek story to me, and he's a great player, and he goes on.
It's a distraction, Neal.
It's a constant distraction. I'm so tired.
I'm hearing about his fetishes, and I'm hearing about his camp wanting trades. What's going on here?
Well, look, let's summarize the Tyreek Hill tenure in Miami. Great football player. 2 of the best single wide receiving seasons the league's ever seen. Over a 2-year period of time, some of the most dominant performances you've ever seen. The NFL voted, the players voted him the #1 player in football. All that is fine and dandy. From the fights on the boats to now this scandal with this woman to getting arrested on the home opener and being in cuffs. And look, I'm not saying that there's sometimes probably where law enforcement goes above and beyond. But when there's smoke, there's fire. And whenever there's something about Tyreek, it's never positive. Everything about it is negative. It's a distraction. It just shows what I think of him. He's a great football player who's completely unserious about winning. So he wants, after the end of the season, where he quits on a team at halftime. People are like, oh, Neal, you're not a competitor then. You don't know what it's like. No, I do know. I know this for sure. In any game that I've ever lost, and I've got my ass kicked in football, I've got my ass kicked in sports, right? The last football game I ever played was on TV, and I lost 35-6 with my whole family watching. And I spent my Thanksgiving getting lectured for missing freaking tackles, right? Like, I get it. The reality of it is no matter how bad it gets, you don't quit on your teammates, and you don't walk off the field and pull yourself from games. Then you go on this tour, and this apology tour, and you say to everyone you're wrong, right? And you look like you're trying to somewhat take some level of accountability for the actions that you had. And then a week later, there's still noise about you being at the Super Bowl. You know what, Tyreek? Tell the Chargers to call us tomorrow with a 2nd-round pick, and your ass can go to the Chargers, okay? Because I'm so tired of the distraction of him that I have to, I can't. Here's the reality, Reason. This is just going to continue to fester. And when things go wrong in the season, instead of being the leader, something's going to go bad this year, and he's going to go back to his true colors here. I am so tired of Tyreek Hill for making the headlines. He wants better players here. And I tweeted this, and I got a ton of people coming after me, and I don't care. Great. We all want better players on this Dolphins roster. You know what else we want? We want our best players playing in the biggest games at their best. And in every one of those measuring stick games that we've lost, sure, maybe Tua hasn't been great. McDaniel's frozen a lot of those games. But one constant that is on the same par with those is that Tyreek Hill fades and makes mistakes and drops footballs. I am so tired of Tyreek Hill. You know what Tyreek Hill's biggest problem is as good as he is, nobody wants him. The Chiefs didn't want him. They went out and won 2 Super Bowls without him, right? Nobody wants Tyreek. It is so tiring to get on the timeline. And he's a hell of a football player. I think the Miami Dolphins are a better football team without Tyreek Hill now. And I know they're one in the long run. The only thing is they can't really do anything until after June 1st because that's when they would get their salary cap reprieve.
So here's where I'm at with this thing. You go up there, you sit in front of a camera, and you do your little thing with Kay Adams. And then you'd say, I want to be here. I want to stay here. You do all that. You do your little song and dance with Kay. Then you go to Pro Football Network with Florio and Sims. You do the song and dance all over again. You say you regret what you said. You regret how it went down. You want to stay here. And something I theorized weeks and weeks ago was, are they just playing nice while the Dolphins look for takers behind the scenes? And this kind of adds more fuel to that fire for me. He's playing nice because he's being told to by Rosenhaus in front of the camera while his crew who have the conversations with him when the cameras aren't on are going out and spewing this type of bullshit because that's what they're hearing from him. And hell, he was the one that said he'd be okay with playing running back for the Dallas Cowboys when asked. So are they really in the wrong if he's saying it in front of them publicly to people who are asking him about it? I don't know. So, and, you know, I get the whole trolling thing, but given the situation, read the fucking room. This isn't right now. If you're trolling or playing around, this isn't the time to be trolling and playing around. We need you locked in. We need you focused. We need the best version of you because we've got goals and expectations to meet this season. And if they aren't met, not only my coaches be gone, but some of your asses are probably going to be gone too. And I'm looking already directly at you, Tyreek. And I'm going to tell you one thing. You know, I always refer back to this since this all went down. It struck me so hard when Richmond sat up there and you could tell he was really bothered by what Tyreek did and how Tyreek quit on this team. And that was the first time I've ever heard Richmond take negative conviction and not swearing and not being mean, but in the terms of you can't trust him. If I was in that locker room, I couldn't trust him. He can't be there anymore. And you're trying to work this out. Everyone's trying to play nice and pat each other on the head and do whatever they do. But here's the thing, Neal. If this man stays, you know what's going to make me throw up? If this man runs out on the field with a C on his chest. There is no way this man, if they do mend this shit, and sorry for the language right now, but I'm passionate about this. There is no way that if they mend this man should even be on the ballot for players to vote for as a captain. He already sold you out. You could make the argument right now, was Richie Incognito a captain? I don't know. I don't think he wasn't a captain.
I don't think so.
Okay, so now you can make the argument that Tyreek Hill's arguably the worst captain in Miami Dolphins sports history. And hell, if you want to include the Panthers and the Heat, you're going to put them up there with the worst in Miami sports history in recent memory? Because you probably got a good case if you want to. So, and that's another thing that'll indict this team. You know, this soft narrative, they want to kill this soft narrative. Okay, well, if you're not going to get rid of the guy and show some edge and show some conviction and stand your ground, and then you allowed teammates to vote him as a captain? No. That's the definition of soft.
It's run its course here, man. Like, it has. And, like, if he's on the roster when the football season starts, look, Tyreek's going to make big plays. He's a great football player. Sometimes you don't win with great football players because they put themselves above the mission of 53 men. Like, I really think, you know, I've heard the Raiders are sniffing around at wide receivers. You want to give us your second-round pick for him? Let's talk. That's a top 10 pick in the second round.
I'd get him in the NFC.
Yeah, I'd let him go to the Raiders.
You want to go to the Cowboys?
Yeah. Do you want go to the Cowboys?
Watch Jaden beat you twice a year, brother. Right, knock yourself out.
Because here's the thing that makes me even more frustrated. Like, he's not a dumb guy. He knows the Chargers. Look, whether we like it or not, that infuriates us because whatever reason, at 2020, it's Justin Herbert versus Tua, and it just is the way it is. So you want to call out that? Like, I feel like there's these subtle little slights that he operates in, and maybe he's joking and trolling. You don't joke and troll when you haven't made the playoffs in 25 years, and you are brought in here to be the difference maker, and you've made no difference.
And you already hear fans complaining all the time about how you guys are laughing on the sideline while we're losing. But continue, Neal.
No, I think the Dolphins, I think they need to free themselves of Tyreek. Here's what it does. It does three things for me. It frees up tremendous cap relief after June 1st, not just this year, but for the future. It allows us to make financial decisions on retaining other players that want to be here and want to get better, right? His play on the field is hard to replace, no doubt about it. But you know what else it does? It allows Jalen Waddle to continue the emergence that we saw before Tyreek was even here. And we continue to see it. I think we have really neglected the upside of Jalen Waddle by force-feeding Tyreek Hill in this offense. If I'm Jalen Waddle, that's the guy who should be the bad cat here. That's the guy who should be requesting trades. I'd be pissed off if I was Jalen Waddle because I think he looks up to Tyreek as a mentor. Jalen Waddle is a way better player than his stats tell us right now because he has to play Robin to Batman that is Tyreek. So you get the emergence of Jalen Waddle, right? Third, you get that out of the building. You change your culture for the positive. I don't care. Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell, when they were talking at the end of the season about people not going to meetings time, they are talking about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, we know.
Tyreek could say that they're not, they are. And
we know it.
When people like Zach Sealer, who is the lunch pail guy who got released from Baltimore as a 7th-round pick from Ferris State, who was living in a damn trailer when he first got here and has became the team leader and fighting and clawed and scratched his way to get to where he is, you think he wants to lose his spot to a little asshole like Tyreek Hill, who's going out there and making everything about himself? And Tyreek is, again, I keep saying this, he's a great football player. We haven't won with him. It's not going to get any worse without him. I don't care. This season to me is a kind of a retooling year as it is. You can't retool with a $30-some million wide receiver who constantly puts your team in bad light in the national spotlight.
And Jim made the point, he said, Reek quit on the team, and then he says this team doesn't have dogs, and you bring up Waddle. And look at Waddle. You know what type of dog Waddle is? Remember the national championship on one good ankle? That man going out there risking millions of dollars to win the national championship. Waddle is a dog. And to your point, he's had to play second fiddle. And it's been, I've gained even more respect for Waddle. And it's really because of his upbringing, right? He had to play second fiddle to Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, all those guys that came through before him and while he was there at Alabama. But, and you're right, I really feel like the better leadership, you want to know something? And I haven't said this yet because it just clicked, but I'll say it. The better leadership from the coaching staff to the players felt like it was on the defensive side of the football. From Weaver to guys like Jordan Brooks to you mentioning Sealer and Calais Campbell, it felt like the leadership was better there because Teron Armstead was always hurt. He's probably your best offensive leader. Your second best offensive leader is probably Tua, always hurt last year, right? And then from there, what do you got? Jonnu Smith isn't really a locker room leader. Aaron Brewer is a recently converted guard to center, not a locker room leader. Jalen Waddle's been second fiddle. He's not a locker room leader. You could say Raheem's a locker room leader, but again, how much was he dependent on? Hurt, et cetera, et cetera.
And he's going to be cut.
Yeah, exactly. But you look on it, you got more dog leaders, you got more real leaders from the coaching staff with Weaver down to the players on defense than we really did on offense. And Tyreek Hill's included on it because to your point, I was talking about it when it wasn't popular and people were coming at me, just like when I was talking about how Bevel should be the play caller year one into McDaniel when I saw the flaws. I was talking about Tyreek's drops when everyone wanted to excuse it because he has back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. And what would I say to people, Neal? Y'all said the 4,600 yards from Tua didn't matter because he didn't show up in big moments. What were we doing for 2 years with 1,700 yards? That's fine and dandy. But what happens in Kansas City and Germany? That guy literally cost us the game with two separate plays. You look at Dallas. Hey, thank God for Waddle the next play, right? Right? Oh, we missed the 80-yard touchdown to Tyreek, but thank God Waddle could be depended on the very next play to catch a 50-plus yard bomb perfectly thrown from Tua. And that's just we could go to the Eagles game where He dropped the touchdown that would have tied the game and changed the whole course of that game. The Ravens came back in the end zone. The Bills in 2022. Hell, the Bills in 2023. Remember 3rd and 7 in the fourth quarter? He dropped the football. We had the punt. Like, I can keep going here, man. So it's crazy.
Even that Cowboys game when we clinched the playoffs, he had a huge drop. We made up for it. Waddle had the big catch on that bomb from Tua. But, like, Tyreek had a huge drop earlier in that. Look, man, I think dogs has become the new elite in terms of the most overused terms in sports. Like, the Dolphins have plenty of guys that you would deem as dogs. The problem with the Dolphins is the biggest dogs in terms of the dogs that they pay aren't really dogs. Like Tyreek Hill's a good football player. He's a horrendous leader. Like, he's a horrible leader. The best teams, their best players are the best leaders, right? To me, I have a hard time. I think that Tyreek's behavior, I think he puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on Tua to force feed him the ball. I have a feeling that he's probably got to be a major distraction in the offensive rooms when Mike McDaniel and the coaching staff are going over plays, because Tyreek's all about Tyreek, and he obviously has no filter. He obviously puts himself before everybody else. It is hard to win in the NFL the way it is. It is hard to lead when your best player is a distraction. As good of a football player is, he's a better person at distracting everyone around him. That's all he does, make noise on social media. Everything he's done off the field, we overlook a lot of times because he's such a good football player. But it's that time now where accountability, you better cash it in here. And I don't know, man. I think this is the offseason to move on from Tyreek. I don't think the Dolphins are going to. I actually feel like the Dolphins look a little bit desperate on how much they want to keep him. This guy has badmouthed them since the last game of the football season in the national spotlight. Who in that organization is going to step up and check Tyreek Hill? Somebody has to. Calais Campbell's not in that locker room anymore, right? Yeah. It's not some of the personality for some of the football players. Like I like people will say it's soft. I don't think it's soft that Tua Tagovailoa is not the kind of guy to go up and check Tyreek. It has to come from above. If it's not going to be McDaniels, if it's not going to be Greer, if it's not going to be Ross, who in that organization's got the guts to check him? Because if he's going to be here, you cannot let him run the way he's been running. As much as we mock the Jets and the Aaron Rodgers tenures, Aaron Glenn just walked in and said, bro, you're not going on Pat McAfee anymore. And if you want to do that shit, you're out. And guess what? Aaron Rodgers is out. Like, no player is bigger than the whole organization. And the Dolphins better look and check him or trade him before he completely blows up and ruins everything that they built to. And we are on the verge of that. We are on the verge of wasting this entire rebuild. This is a pivotal year in that. And, man, I don't know, man. I don't think there's a litany of teams that are lined up to get him. I think the contenders like Houston and Baltimore, the teams that could go, or Pittsburgh that need wide receivers, view him as a bigger distraction than asset at this point. And I think you're going to need a team that is a bad football team that's desperate to want to pony up something to get Tyreek. And now, correct me if I'm wrong. He does not have a no trade clause, does he?
I don't know.
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does.
So
I know Lawrence does. Lawrence does.
I'll tell you what. I wonder how he would like Carolina. You want to badmouth the Dolphins? I wonder how you would like Carolina
or Cleveland.
Right. Exactly. So you be careful what you wish for, because
we already did it to Jarvis. Look what we did to Jarvis. We sent him upstream to Cleveland.
Because I will say this reason. I do think Tyreek wants out of Miami. I do. I think that everything that they're doing, I think Drew at Rosenhaus has probably been trying to put feelers out there and trying to find a landing spot for him. And I think Tyreek's probably coming back with his tail between his legs a little bit, because there's not a long line of people that want to bring him in right now. And when a player's that talented and people don't want him, and I know they just lost the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs are the standard still to me, it tells you a lot.
Yeah, I'm listen, this is just becoming, it sucks because defended him over the Marina stuff. We've defended him since and early on for that first year, he looked like he was going to change his ways, but I guess eventually a leopard always shows its spots.
Will you agree with this? Do you agree with this? He doesn't feel like part of the team right now to me. He doesn't. Like, he doesn't feel like a Miami Dolphin to me right now. He kind of feels like he's in that gray area. Like, I don't have the feeling like I did with him the last couple of years here, like coming in, like, at least we have Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Like, I don't have that feeling this year. I have a feeling that we have a ticking time bomb that's going to be a malcontent until he gets what he wants. And I think ultimately he wants to get out. Like, people, will say that, no, there's no way. Tyreek was okay with getting traded last deadline. That was, like, known. Like, people know that Tyreek was okay. He wasn't forcing the issue, but he was okay being moved to a contender. He wanted to go back to the Chiefs. When you leave your home, right? Like we were just talking about, like leaving home and our parents, and you can't go back home. What does that say?
Yeah, I know. And, it's funny. I see people, because we were talking about the drops and people in the chat are like, well, because I said, Tyreek led the league in drops in 2023. Well, reason he led the NFL in targets. He had 171 targets. He had 12 drops. Okay. Ja'Marr Chase had 175 targets this year and only 9 drops. Why didn't Ja'Marr Chase, who had 4 more targets than Tyreek had last year, why didn't Ja'Marr Chase lead the NFL in drops? See, again, everyone wants to make excuses. But then they're the same people that don't want to make, but the same people that, well, the numbers don't matter. Tua can lead the NFL in completion percentage and passer rating and in passing yards like he has, and like we all said, unlike those people said he would never do, but he did. But those stats don't matter because we ain't won. But people want to sit here and defend those same hollow stats for a receiver when we ain't won Jack Bo Diddley.
Right?
I don't. What world?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Keep it $150 because I'll be the first one to tell you. Yeah, it's great that Tua was the first Pro Bowl quarterback in 30 years. It's great that Tua led in all those categories. But what has that resulted in a playoff? Same thing. I'll say the same thing for Tyreek Hill. What has that led to in terms of playoff success? Zero, zilch, nada. Miss me with it. Keep the same energy with everyone. That's all I'm sitting here. Be objective.
100%. Everybody has failed together, right? Like the GM, the coach, the quarterback, the receiver. There is culpability everywhere.
I call them the three-headed monster.
Right.
McDaniel, Tua, and Tyreek. They're either going to fail together, 2 of the 3 are going to fail, or one of them is going to fail and cost you the game.
Right. Well, look what good for us. Look what Buffalo did to Stephon Diggs, and everyone told them they were idiots, and they were going to have the Legion of Twos, and they had Matt Collins and all those guys replace Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs went to Houston. He did get hurt, but Buffalo's clearly more of a contender than the Houston Texans.
And more cohesive.
And they were better without him.
Yeah.
They were. You know why? Because I don't think Josh Allen was force feeding Stephon Diggs the ball.
No. And they could freely run the ball whenever they wanted to now. Look at James Cook. Guys out here asking for $15 million a year now.
Right. 100%. And you can, like, especially at the wide receiver position, you can win. And then you don't have to be desperate enough to acquiesce to the demands of a receiver. The receivers have always been that loud group, I feel like, and it goes back 20 years plus, the Keyshawn Johnson types that have been in the headlines for the wanting the money, all the wrong reasons, and none of those teams ever won championships, man. Randy Moss is my favorite receiver of all time, got the same amount as Lombardi's that I got, right? Like, at the end of the day, 32, like we not only did we make Tyreek rich once, we made him rich twice.
Yeah.
And what have we got back? Right. What have we got back for that? And it's just like, and people get upset because he's a good player. We all know that. Like he's the best player on our football team. I know that. But I think the Miami Dolphins are better without him. And now and in the long run, not to take away because he was a huge part of that number 1 offense and what we've done the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But I do think they're better in the long run without him.
And you didn't construct this roster properly to withhold the cap hit of $230 million, wide receivers. You're not Howie Roseman. That's why I say, no longer can we have the excuse of, Tua's contract and the receiver's contract holding this team back. It's how you build through the draft and with your contracts that matters. And we mentioned the offensive line. You hit on a 7th round pick who was an Aussie rugby player, and you turned him into a stud tackle. Landon Dickerson, no injuries. That guy's not getting out of the first. Injuries, slip to the second. They took the shot on him. Cam Jurgens was a guy I was really high on, and a lot of people were really low on, and they made something out of him. And we're just talking about the offensive line. Look at Jalen Carter fell in their lap. You know what I mean? And look at how the trenches on both sides are never skimped, because if they got to cut back the budget, they increase the draft capital to even it out, and they make the right picks with those picks. They aren't whiffing and waiting 2 or 3 years for the guys to contribute. I mean, the key thing with how that's been built is they got a lot of key impact players right away. Jalen Carter was an impact player in year 1. This year, Quinyon Mitchell, as well as Cooper DeJean, who Dolphin fans were arguing with me about me saying the Dolphins should take him in the 2nd round. How do y'all feel right now? I just, it's just the way we built. You can get by with 2 $30 million receivers, but you got to build from the inside out, and we didn't get that right. And you got to be good drafting. And the problem is, to get Chubb, to get Tyreek, we gave up key picks where you could have rebuilt your depth. And what sucks is what you said earlier, Neal. You spent all those picks, and if you trade Tyreek, what are you really going to get back? You'll be lucky if you get back a 2nd and a 4th. So I don't know. That's where I don't know. It's another situation.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on, man. I do.
So any final thoughts before you get out of here? And I wanted to ask you on your final thoughts. Do you think Raheem Mostert is the easiest cut for this team to make heading into the offseason?
Can you say that again, Reese? I couldn't hear the question. I think we're having a little bit of a connection issue.
Did you okay, so do you think final thoughts, and do you think Raheem Mostert is the easiest contract to move off of this offseason?
Final thoughts is, man, I'm ready for the draft. Free agency doesn't even excite me. I just want to fill some needs. I'm ready for the draft, man. I'm in full draft mode. I think this is the draft, like you said, to build these trenches, get this right. Defensive line, offensive line, everywhere in between. Double up on the positions. Go get me a guy like Kenneth Grant, and then go get me another guy in round 3. I just think this is the time. And with the Mostert, I think Mostert's gone. I think Durham Smythe's gone. I think that they have to be selective on who they can grow. So I think it's Mostert, Jake Bailey, and Durham Smythe are 3 contracts that save them $7.1 in cap space. I think they're going to restructure Tua for $19.3. Austin Jackson, Jordan Brooks, Zach Sealer, that gets them another $19 in cap savings from restructuring. And then the one that I want to keep an eye on is Bradley Chubb, because I think post-June is $20 million in savings, or they can restructure him for about $13. Something tells me that they might want to keep Chubb, and that they might restructure him to keep him here, but also to get that cap space available pre-June. So I don't know. I think they can create $50 million in space. Do they need it, though? Because here's one thing I will say is, we've been a team that's had a ton of cap space. Look at teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens that operate always up against the cap. They never have more than 10, 15 in cap space. They never go over. But those are the teams that keep winning because they operate very well in the ramifications and structures of the cap. Something tells me maybe the Dolphins can have a better offseason if they don't have a lot of money to spend, because then it really makes them focus on the draft as their avenue to add players, right? I don't think the Dolphins have a big trade they can make right now unless that's acquiring a player that's on a friendly contract to them. They can't afford another $20 million cap hit. So, I think that they're going to be economically shopping, and people hear that and say, oh, it sucks. Well, that's how we got Jonnu Smith. That's how we got Aaron Brewer. That's how we got Jordan Brooks. Give me 3 to 4 guys like that, a couple guards maybe. Go give me 3 or 4 players of the Jordan Brooks, Aaron Brewer ilk, and I think that's a successful free agency. They got restricted free agent. Cater Kohu, they're going to bring back. They're going to bring Cater back, and he's a restricted free agent. So he's going to get a big bump in pay, kind of like we saw with Liam Eichenberg last year. I think Cater's going to probably get in that $5 million year range. So they're going to have to maneuver a little bit Benito Jones they can bring back for cheap. I like to see them keep Terrell Dotson as a linebacker 2 here, or linebacker 3, as the guy maybe that they get somebody in the draft. So, but yeah, I think that you go in with an open slate. Go give me one good quality starting left guard, and you'll make me happy. I don't need a lot of free agency because I do think it's time to start building this team via the draft. And we got away with that. We went all in. We did the F the picks model. It didn't pan up for us. It actually was like the dream team that the Eagles tried to put together a few years back. I think it's time to say, you know what? We have a ton of draft capital this year, next year. Let's go for it via the draft.
All right, guys. I'm going to have some videos dropping for you. I'm heading out to Vegas on Sunday, but I got videos coming to you guys in between that time. I got some topics that are really going to interest you guys, so be out on the lookout for that. I'm going to drop at least 2 videos. It might be 3, so just be on the lookout. If I do drop video 3, it'll be Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. If I drop 2, it'll probably be Monday and Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. Smash the
Where are you staying, Reason? Where are you staying in Vegas?
Bellagio.
Oh, nice, man. I love Vegas.
So smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through, and we'll see you on the next one. Fins up all day, every day.